Hi guys! So today I'm going to walk you through a full body circuit that I've written for you. There's a total of 7 exercises. So it should take, I would give about 45 minutes to an hour to do this, and that should include your warm-up and your cool-down. So it'll be both upper and lower body exercises, so we're targeting the whole body. So you'll go through this circuit 3 times. 3 times, 3 is a magic number. And you want to keep a good pace while doing it. I'd recommend once you've finished one exercise going straight into the next, just to keep the body heat up, the body temperature up, and keep in the zone, really. So we'll be starting off with a lower body movement and then moving on to an upper body movement and then again repeating. So that's why it's good to just continue on. If you feel like you need a quick break, like no more than 30 seconds, because we want to keep the body moving, we want to keep the muscles warm because we've already primed them. If you sit for too long, then you're going to cool down, you're going to have to warm up again. And then that's just going to drag the workout on for much longer than it needs to be. So one quick point I will make. The lower body stuff is great to do body weight, but anything that's upper body, I'm going to highly suggest, using either a resistance band or a weight. Doesn't matter if it's just like a 2 kilo weight like I've got here, or I've filled up a bottle with water, which also weighs 2 kilos. Whatever will add resistance, because the upper body, just moving in the air, it's not going to do anything. Whereas at least with lower body, you've got your body weight on top of that. So definitely add some weights. I would just say add some weights with all of the movements, because it's going to be more effective, you're going to feel it more. And you know, when you're spending time working out, you want to feel like you're getting something out of it. So a bit of weight, it doesn't have to be anything crazy, especially if you don't weight lift. Like for me, I like to make sure that I'm at least still challenging myself, even though I'm working out at home. So that for me has meant higher reps generally. But I've also invested a bit of money into some weights and stuff, and I'm going to get more. But that's because I love it. Anyway, you don't need a lot of weight if you're not usually doing weightlifting. If you are, it can still be effective, but you might want to just add some more reps or even just a few more rounds of the circuit. I'll leave that up to you. If you've been weightlifting for a while, you'll know at least a little bit about programming, so you can play around with this as much as you want. So first movement that we're going to do is the squat. And the squat is a compound lift. Compound meaning that there are various parts of the body that gets involved. So I will show you with a resistance band, but again, you can use additional weights. You can use additional weights with the resistance band as well. So important cues for the squat is to have the chest open. You want to keep your spine long. Don't curve too much in the lower back. Go as low as feels comfortable. I'm going to demonstrate for you, but I can only go so low at the moment because I rolled my foot a few weeks ago and that's still healing. So the squat is a little bit tricky for me if I try to go as deep as I usually can. Foot placement is a very personal thing with the squat. I like to have my feet out a bit wider. I've got wide hips, and so that feels more comfortable for me. The main thing to make sure of is that your knees are tracking over your toes. So wherever your feet are angled out to, make sure that the knees are moving in that same line. You want to protect your knees. If you feel any sharp pains in your knees, it means that you need to adjust your stance. And again, that's going to be personal to you. Feel free to just try out different variations, and wherever it feels comfortable is a good indication that you're in the right spot. Another point I want to make out is that with the lower body movements, you're always going to want to be pushing from the heel of your foot. You can with certain movements, like with the squat, if you feel like you're pushing more out of your the front of your foot, that's fine as well. You're just going to be working the quads more than you'll be working like the glutes and hamstrings. So actually varying it a little is fine. There's a type of squat you can do with a raised heel. So if you've got something that you can stand on the heel, and that helps to target the quads more. So if you decide you want to do one round of just feet flat on the floor, go for it. And then you want to raise your heels a little for the next round just to vary it so the quads get a little more involved. That's great too. We are going to target the quads with some lunges. But again, I'll leave that up to you. Have fun. May as well play with it if you can. It's all about enjoying what you're doing. One other thing I'll mention about the squat is sometimes you'll see people kind of thrusting at the top of the movement, like they really squeeze their butt. There's no need to do that. You kind of just want to be moving in a fluid action. I see some women just kind of really thrusting at the top of the movement. It's not a hip thrust. And that can, it'll be okay for us because we're doing mainly body weight or low resistance, but when you're adding heavy weights, it's not great for the lower back. So if you do have some lower back sensitivity, just make sure that you'll feel that your butt muscles are getting involved, but there's no need to sort of squeeze them at the top of the movement and pushing your hips forward. It's just not necessary, and it's just going to place more strain on your lower back. Okay, so first movement is squats. So you want to stand into the band, feet about hips distance apart. I'm just going to step back a little. Like I said, I've got wider hips, so I like to have a wider stance. If you've got narrower hips, you can do a narrow stance. You can also just try a narrow stance squat as well, and that'll actually target the quads more. But I'm going to demonstrate with a wider stance. So feet turning out. You want to have a good amount of tension on the band, so I'd suggest either wrapping like this, but holding it at your side. So we want to hinge at the hips as we're going down, so that way down, chest up, and you want to feel a squeeze in the glutes as you're coming up. So from the side, and another thing you can do is actually hold the band, hold the hands at the chest. So you want to have core engaged, butt engaged, and squat. And again, you can do this with water bottles. I find it more comfortable to hold the bottles in front of me at my chest. Feet out, feet placement wherever feels comfortable, and squat. And from the side. So the next movement is the always beloved push-up. So we've gone from lower body to upper body, and again, push-up is replicating the bench press, which is another compound lift. This is a compound lift because the whole body does get involved. So a tip that's really helped me with the push-up is thinking of it as a full body movement. So even though it's targeting the chest and the pecs and muscles in the arms and the back as well, it is full body. You want to keep your core engaged and your butt muscles want to be engaged as well. And then that in turn will get your legs involved. And so this will essentially make the body into like a plank, and then that makes it easier to leverage rather than it kind of just flopping about all over the place because the muscles in the rest of the torso aren't engaged. So make sure core engaged, butt engaged, legs engaged, and that just helps you really get to the movement. And you might actually find, if you've not tried that before, you might actually find that you're able to do more or actually go lower. I'm going to show you on my knees. I'm still working on my full body push-up. I can do I can do some, I just can't go as low. So it will get to the point where I can kind of do them too easily now on my knees, so it's time for me to level up. But if you're at your current strength level, you're only able to do them modified on the knees, that's fine. It's just about doing it. So as well, just go as low as feels comfortable, but still challenging yourself. So if you hit a point and you feel like if I go any lower than this, I'm just going to collapse to the floor, then that's your point. So just keep working with that. The push-up is a skill just like anything else, and it will get better over time the more you work at it. Nobody jumps on a bike for the first time being able to ride. We all started with training wheels, unless you're a freak of nature with amazing balance skills and coordination and all that, but I'll believe that when I see it. You know what I mean though? Anything takes practice. Everything takes practice. Nobody is born a master, so everyone's born an apprentice. So keep a beginner's mindset with that kind of thing. And just know that each time you come back to it, you'll get better at it. It's just the way it works. Another thing I'll note as well with the push-up is, and which will be repeated with all of the upper body movements, is that you want to keep your chest up, shoulders back. This is important. It's a chest movement. We want to encourage these muscles in the chest to get involved. Shoulders down as well, back and down, because we want to protect our rotator cuff muscles. The shoulder is the only floating joint in the body, and because of that, because it's a floating joint, it's highly unstable, and that instability means that it's really easy to injure that area. So we want to protect the shoulders. You don't want to rotate a cuff injury. It sucks. I used to get them doing yoga, which is part of the reason why I started doing weight training, because I realized that I needed to build upper body strength if I was to continue doing yoga. So yeah, we want to protect the shoulders. So back, and I don't mean like back, down. Nice long neck is another way of thinking about it. And that helps to get the back muscles engaged too, because by just doing that, I can feel that I'm engaging the upper back muscles. So that's a good thing. So remember, core engaged, butt engaged. You can even get your quads and your thigh muscles involved, just a bit of tightness there. Hands, I determine that by about 45 degrees out, and that's where I'll place my hands. So getting into position. Shoulders back, chest up, core engaged. I look forward a bit. If you want to have your feet up, you can. And push up. Yeah. Let's see if I can. See. I'm getting there, but I can't really do it completely. But I'm getting there. But like I did there, if you can only go so low, just go as low as you can, and then you feel like you're just going to collapse, then that's your point. You'll eventually build that strength to go really low. It's a practice. It's just like anything else. The more you practice it, the better you get at it. So have fun. So next is, I've written a variation here. You can do either step-ups or lunges. I've written this variation because I can't lunge at the moment. I mean, I can on one of my legs, but on my left leg, which I injured, I can't do it at the moment. So I've been subbing all my lunges for step-ups, which works the same muscle on the leg that you're stepping. So it's quite good, and actually you can get a bit of height if you do it on stairs. If you're going to do it on stairs, I suggest skipping a step, because otherwise it's not going to be doing much, and we want to challenge ourselves. So everyone knows a step up and a lunge, but I'll still show you. I'll show you how to utilize the band with this as well. And again, you can use weights in both hands for these movements. If your balance is a little off, because balance is not my forte, still working on that. Hold it in one hand, you can kind of lean another hand against the wall. That's okay, just as long as you're not pulling yourself up. by having the hand on the wall. I like to have my fingers just kind of resting on my hands, just like this, just to remind myself to not use the wall as a way of easing out of the movement. I want to be working the muscles that I'm supposed to be working when I'm doing this exercise. So again, you want to push into the heel of your foot, whether you're doing the step up or the lunge, it doesn't matter. We want to focus on getting into the heel of the foot. Now, how far back you step is up to you. A narrower stance is going to focus more on the quads, and a longer stance is going to focus more on the glutes and the hamstrings. And again, you can vary this up. You can even vary up between step-ups and lunges when you go back over the circuit, just to add a bit of variety to it. Lunges. So we're just going to step one foot into the band. I'm just going to show you on my right leg because my left is my injured leg at the moment. So I'll just show you from the side. So we want to have good tension on the band again. So we'll hold the band from standing position and then just kick one leg out and lower. I'd like a bit more tension. And repeated with bottles, it's the same movement pattern. Now with the step ups, if you're going to use a folded chair, be careful. Make sure it's not going to collapse on you. I wouldn't necessarily use a band with this. You could. I just think doing this is enough, though I would suggest doing it with weights. So it's pretty self-explanatory. We know how to step up, but just make sure you're careful. The fourth exercise is the banded row, so we're returning to the upper body. And again, upper body movement, chest up, shoulders back, and we're rowing. So you can do this seated, which I'll show you, or you can do it standing, again with bands or the weights. The movement pattern is the same. You want to have your body at about a 45-degree angle, the chest up, and just kind of look up. We want to, but not too much. We don't want to crank the neck or looking down too much. We want to kind of look directly in front of us or slightly up above us, just to keep the spine elongated. It's important. There are certain movements where the placement of the head really does matter. This is one of them. And you want to let the weights kind of drop and then pull back. Another point I'll make is that at the top of the movement, you want to feel a squeeze, that you're squeezing the shoulder blades together. Because this is also a movement that targets the muscles in the back. The first upper body we did was a push, now we're going into a pull. So we're targeting the other side of the body with this. Also again, core engaged, legs engaged, a slight bend in the knees as well to have them engaged. Chest up, shoulders back, and row. And again, I'll show you with the bands. I'll show you with the weights as well, but the movement pattern is the same. But I'll show you. So next is banded row. So again, step into the band. Feet I'd have just about hips distance. And again, you want to have a good amount of tension on the band. So bending at the hips, slight bend in the knees, chest up, shoulders back, and row. Keeping the torso at about a 45-degree angle. So again, from the side, chest up, shoulders back, hinge at the hips, core engaged, slight bend in the knees, looking ahead of you, shoulders back, row. And the movement pattern is the same with, say, bottles. I'll show you from the side. So feet about hips width apart, bending at the hips, bend in the knees. Let the arms drop, but the shoulders back. Core engaged, look forward. So we'll be returning to the lower body next with the hip thrust. Now this is a movement that targets the glutes, and it's the most effective glute building exercise out there. If you're curious, look up a dude called the Glute Guy. Also, his name is Brett Contreras. He's been doing years and years of research into the glute muscle, it's sort of his thing. So one thing I'll mention that's really important, which comes back again to head placement, is you want to have your chin on your chest. Chin down. I find keeping my focus on a certain point beyond me and just holding that there, that is encouraging me to hold that position of my head, is a good point. Otherwise, I'll just watch my knees. The position of the head has a lot to do with the activation of the glute muscles. I'm not an exercise scientist, I can't go into that, and I don't really think you guys would care too much, but just trust me. If you just keep it looking up and keep the neck sort of where it's at now, it does have an effect on how much the glute muscles will get involved. And you want to, just like with any exercise movement that we're doing, we want it to be effective. Also, form is important, so it's just one of those factors to keep in mind. Foot placement, so ideally you want to have your feet directly under your knees, so you want to have your legs at a 90-degree angle. You can kick your feet out or forward. This will affect the muscles that get involved. If your feet are too far forward, the hamstrings are going to take over, and if your foot is too far back, then the quads are going to take over. So we want this to be working the glutes. This is also where using a band might get a bit tricky unless you have something that can weight down the edges, and then you can just lie the band across your hips. This is where I would suggest getting something like the water bottle and then just placing it on your lap and using that. Unless you can strap the ends of the resistance bands down or weight them down with furniture or something. I personally just end up using weights. Another thing as well, which you'll see when I'm doing it, is where to place the edge of the chair. So ideally it shouldn't go any lower than the shoulder blades. You kind of want it to sit mid shoulder blade, but this really depends on the height of the stool or the chair, or like in the case of the gym, you use a bench, and for me the benches are that little bit too high, so I have to just kind of adjust, and that actually affects how low I go in the movement. You'll see when I demonstrate what I mean, and I'll touch on that. Ideally no lower than the shoulder blades, and again it'll depend on what you have available. You can substitute this with the glute bridge, but if you have the opportunity to do both, I would highly suggest the hip thrust over the glute bridge, just because there's more range of motion, so the glutes are going to get more of a workout. Also, at the top of the movement, you want to think of making your body into a plank or like a tabletop. So there's a similarity here between the yoga pose tabletop, which is, you know, where you've got your hands on the ground, legs on the ground, and then you push your upper body up and you're essentially a table. So I'm pointing this out because you don't want to over thrust your hips at the top of the movement, so where you're kind of doing this rounded motion with your hips, you just want to get it up to a point where you're flat. This just it's just better engagement for the glutes, and it's also not going to put too much pressure on the lower back, which we don't want to do. Don't want to do that. Sacrum doesn't like it, you don't want lower back issues, that shit sucks. So next is hip thrust. And like I said, we want to aim to have the edge of the chair about mid-shoulder, but no lower than the shoulder blades. So again, if you're using a foldable chair, be careful. I like to start from the floor with this one. So in this regard, because this chair is foldable, I use the legs to help me up, find my mid back. So this is the starting position. So head looking forward, I'm looking at the wall in front of me. My feet are at a 90-degree angle. You can kick your legs out if you want. That will target different parts of the glutes, or just knees in line with the hips. Use your arms for leverage and then just dip down. And we're pushing into the heel of the foot. So if it helps, you can raise your toes off the floor. I realise that one looks a bit funny. When you're first doing it at the gym, yeah, can be a little self-conscious about it. After a while, you don't really give a fuck. Well, very quickly, and I didn't give a shit. But yeah, fun. So we'll add weight to this one. So again, I'm just going to start on the floor. Put the weight in my lap. Get into starting position. And it's good to have one hand on the weight. And again, focusing on driving from the heels. And then squeeze the glutes at the top of the movement. Head looking forward, chin to chest. And exercise number 6 is the overhead press. So you can do this again banded or with weights. With the bands, it can get a little tricky finding where to sit the bands around your arms. I have it on the outside of my arms, so like this. You can try that way as well, whatever feels comfortable. But again, it's an upper body movement, so chest up, shoulders back and down, and then arms at about a 45-degree angle. They can be a little bit further out than that. Don't over-exaggerate it, because then you're going to cause a lot of strain on the pec muscles and the rotator cuff, and you don't want that injury. That's not fun. So inside, about 45 degrees, chest up, shoulders back, and then just pushing up. And again, this isn't one that I usually do with the band, so you're actually going to get a lot of resistance out of it, which is good. It means it's going to be really effective. If you're finding that too awkward, just use the water bottle. The form cues are the same, and then just up and down. So next is overhead press. So you can have just one foot on the band or both. I'm going to use both. That way I've got a bit more range of motion for the bands. So it's good to have a slight bend in the knees, keep the core engaged, keep the butt muscles engaged as well. It just helps if the rest of the body is a solid foundation. So then chest up, shoulders down and back. And then, like I said, it can get a little tricky. And then pressing up. 45-degree angle on the arms. You can look ahead of you or look slightly up. And again, I'll show you from the side. And then with the bottles, cues are exactly the same. Foot placement really is just what makes you feel like you've got a solid foundation. It's like bending the knees, core engaged, chest up, shoulders back, and then up. And then we're just going to end with an ab exercise. And I chose bicycle crunches because it's a cross body movement, and we've been doing a lot of like forward, down sort of stuff. So it's kind of good to get some rotation involved. And I feel like everyone should know this movement, but what I will point out is just make sure that your lower back is flat on the floor. You don't want to be curling up into your lower back because, again, we want to protect our lower back. It's a very sensitive area. You can do this at your own pace. It's kind of nice. Sometimes I'll slow it down because it can actually be more challenging going through the movement slow, which can add a whole other level of challenge because abs are not my favorite body part to work, but it's good to feel them strong. And then the final move is bicycle crunches. So lying on the floor. So we want to flatten our lower back to the floor. Feet up. Push out with the stomach as well. That helps to keep the lower back flat on the floor, and also we're focusing on the abs, so it's good to have them already engaged. Hands behind the back, and then opposite elbow to opposite knee, and repeat. Ab fans. You know what I mean. So once you've completed the circuit once, have about a 1 to 2 minute rest before continuing onwards, just to give yourself a little bit of a break, and then just go back into it, and again 1 or 2 minutes rest, go back through it, and then do a cool down. I'll write some suggestions of stretches you can do. I'll write out a list of stretches. I'm not going to demonstrate them for you. If you have any questions about any of them, I'll send you some information, whether it's a video or just like a detailed instruction list of how to do the stretches. A lot of the stretches that I do are just based on yoga moves. So like seated forward fold. Cow's face pose is a really good one. So the upper half of that is where you fold one arm on top of the other. Twist the hands together. If you can't do that, then just hands like that, or if you can grab a thumb, that works as well. Shoulders back down. And then the bottom half of that is where you have one leg folded over the other, which can be a bit challenging for some people. So if that's too much, but that's a really good stretch for the back. So I suggest including that, as well as your general hamstring stretch, quad stretch, calf stretch, tricep, chest. Yep, you'll have a band there, hopefully. If not, use a scarf. You can just grasp it. If you can't, clasp your hands behind your back. That's a really good stretch for the chest, so I highly recommend doing that. As well as like child's pose and a cobra. They're good for the front and back body as well. And pigeon. Pigeon can be a bit tricky for some people, but I highly suggest doing it. If you can't do pigeon, try figure 4, which is basically you just fold your opposite ankle on top of the opposite knee. You can do it in a chair and then just fold forward. And that's a good stretch for the glutes, which you'll want to stretch after completing this because all of the lower body movements do target the glutes in some way. And that's it. So please let me know how you go. Please let me know what you think of it. And if you'd like another one or some more like this where I can replace some of the movements for you and write up a completely fresh one so that way you've got some variety in the types of movements that you're doing, I'm more than happy to do this. I'm really enjoying it. So if you'd like me to do some more, please let me know. I will happily comply. And yeah, have fun. Bye.